George Washington made a lot of history in a lot of places, but perhaps the most significant and important thing he did right here inside this building.
Annapolis is a really pretty city. It's just beautiful here. All of this Georgian architecture.
I visited Annapolis on a bitterly cold day in January. Annapolis is the picturesque home of the U.S. Naval Academy, and it's also the capital of our 7th state, Maryland. The heart of government for the Old Line State is right here in the historic Maryland State House. Remember when the U.S. Mint issued a series of collectible quarters featuring each state? The one honoring Maryland featured this building. Maryland was the only state which showcased its state capital on its quarter. Now, it's not a bucket list item for me, but of the states which featured an actual place on their quarters, and more than half of them didn't, but I've now been to 9 of those places. It's kind of a fun thing to keep track of. The Maryland State House was built at about the same time as the American Revolution. Maryland's legislature has been meeting here since 1772, making this the longest continuously used legislative building in the country, more than 250 years. The building is the site of a lot more history than just Maryland's legislature. The United States Congress also met here for a couple of years.
So in addition to George Washington being here and this being the capital, the Treaty of Paris, which ended the Revolutionary War, was also signed inside this building.
Actually, I think I need to read a little bit more carefully. The Treaty of Paris was ratified here. At the time of my visit, there was some renovation work underway, so access to the State House was through the basement entry. This is the breathtaking House of Delegates chamber, which was used by the lower house until the turn of the last century. It has been restored and maintained as it would have appeared when it was last used during the Victorian era. Amazing ceiling, ornate lighting, formal drapery and carpets. Just gorgeous. There are life-size statues here memorializing 2 of Maryland's brightest icons. 2 people born as slaves here in Maryland, but who eventually led the fight to abolish slavery and fight for equality. Across the hall is the Senate chamber, which boasts a little bit of history of its own. The United States Congress met in this building for a couple of years. This was the Congress from the period before the U.S. Constitution, so it would have been during the time of the Articles of Confederation. But the big history in this chamber is that this was where General George Washington resigned his commission. It was an event virtually unprecedented in human history, wherein a victorious leader voluntarily gave up his power. The anteroom to the Senate chamber is filled with exhibits and audio-visual presentations about this event and its significance, and it happened right here 2 days before Christmas in 1783. The sad part of my visit was that the Senate chamber itself, where Washington actually delivered his address, was under renovation. The statue of Washington, which is the centerpiece of the chamber, was wrapped up for protection during the construction activities. However, it was still possible to poke your head into the room and take pictures.
Unfortunately, the old Senate chamber is being remodeled. But how awesome is this to stand in the same room where George Washington once stood? And of course, this is where the historic event, first in human history, where a leader voluntarily just gave up power and resigned his commission as the General of the Continental Army. December 23rd, 1783, right here.
Just out front is the text of Washington's address, written in his own hand. Truly inspiring. Maryland's legislature is called the General Assembly, comprised of the Senate and the House of Delegates.
Over here on this side is the House chamber and the Senate chamber. Let's take a peek inside the Senate chamber. So it looks like there's 45 names up there on the board. So I'm going to go on a limb and say that Maryland Senate has 45 members.
These two bodies meet in chambers that were added as an annex to the building in 1901.
This is the House chamber. In Maryland, the lower house is called the House of Delegates. Looks like about 130 names on the wall there. I'll have to check and see exactly what the size is of House of Delegates.
Both chambers feature Tiffany skylights. It looks like the House chamber is larger than the Senate chamber, but because there are so many more delegates than senators, I think the senators' desks look to be more spacious. The delegates' chamber appears to be a little bit crowded. I wonder what would happen if they moved this sign and put it outside the front door instead. Out in front of the State House is a plaza called Lawyers Mall, which was constructed here in the early 1970s. It showcases a reverent memorial to Marylander Thurgood Marshall, who litigated the landmark civil rights case Brown v. Board of Education, which ended segregation in schools in America. Thurgood Marshall was later appointed as the first black justice on the United States Supreme Court. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, please click on the thumbs up. It helps YouTube share it with other people who might also appreciate this type of video. And if you enjoy the content on my channel, I'd be honored to have you as a subscriber. This is Postcard Dan in Annapolis, Maryland.